What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is my full card breakdown and prediction video for UFC 311. We have Islam Makhachev going against Arman Tsarukyan 2, and we're right back at it for the very first pay-per-view card of the year, and what a card it is. They're really stacking this one up. So we did lose two fighters, but we didn't lose any fights. We had two fighters had to pull out, but they're getting short notice replacements stepping in for them. We lost Johnny Walker. He was supposed to fight Bogdan Guskov. I think that fight would have played out in very hilarious fashion. And then we also lost Stu Dumas. He was supposed to take on Zachary Reese. But like I said, the UFC has two new guys coming in here making their debut on about a week's notice each. So those fights should be fun to talk about. We have two title fights on the main card as well, so looking forward to that. And yeah, just a great card overall. So before we get into it, if you guys could do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment. All three of those things go a very long way. If you guys do want to go the extra mile or support me more, check out dfsbythenumbers.com. That's where you'll find all my other content. I do a ton of content behind the scenes on the website. I do the best bet article where I break down the entire fight, get my prediction, the round, the method, the confidence rating, the best bet, and then I added the new long shot prop section last week. Last week we had Klein round 2 at like plus 900. The Curtis Kopylov fight ends in round 3 at plus 1,000, and that was even a track bet for me last week. The Curtis Kopylov fight ends round 3. Shout out to Mark Smith. Thank you, Mark Smith, for that. So yeah, good way to kick off the year last week, up about 5 units and looking to keep the momentum rolling into UFC 311. Have a good amount of action already, and I think it's going to be a fun card from a fan perspective, a betting perspective as well. Since this is a pay-per-view card, going to be doing the first contest, the Significant Strike contest of the year. To enter the contest, again, like, subscribe, and then comment down how many significant strikes you think that Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan are going to combine for. $25 the first. If there's a tie, the tiebreaker goes to the person that commented first. So comment down those significant strikes, and we'll see who gets closest to the mark there. And then I do want to shout out Prize Picks. Now's a great time to check out Prize Picks. Use that promo code DFSBTN, and you'll get $50 free on Prize Picks when you play your first $5 entry. Whether it wins or loses, you'll get $50 free into your Prize Picks account. And not only that, got a free pick for you guys. National Championship. Will Howard needs 1 passing yard. And yeah, Will Howard's kind of grown on me throughout the year. Wasn't a big fan of him initially, but I think he's pretty solid. And I think he's solid enough to get 1 passing yard. So check out the free National Championship pick. Will Howard to get 1 yard. And then use that code DFSBTN. Get yourself 50 free bucks. And then let's make some money on Prize Picks this week. With all that out of the way, I say we get into it. We have a lot of fights to talk about, and we're going to kick it off with Tagir Ulanbekov, and he's taking on Clayton Carpenter. We got Tagir Ulanbekov, 33 years old, 5'7", with a 70-inch reach, 15-2, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Clayton Carpenter, 28 years old, 5'6", with a 66-inch reach, 8-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. So we'll take a look at the odds. And in terms of these odds, guys, we have like 10 fighters who are minus 300 or greater this week. It's crazy. And this is the first one. We have Tagir opening up minus 300, currently minus 300. We had Clayton Carpenter opened up plus 250. He's currently a plus 250 underdog. And I'm a big fan of Clayton Carpenter. I think this guy's pretty solid, still only 28 years old, BJJ black belt, very good grappler. The striking is certainly a work in progress. Didn't really look like how his striking was looking in his last fight, where he was able to get that submission win against Lucas Hocha. Was kind of getting pieced up at times in that fight. Also didn't love how his striking was looking at points in that Edgar Chairez fight. But yeah, I think Clayton Carpenter is pretty solid everywhere, but this is going to be just an astronomical step up in competition. Like, you're talking about Carpenter going from a guy like Lucas Hocha, who is like 4'9", Juan Camilo Ronderos, the guy that did cocaine, to a guy in Tagir Ulanbekov, who's, a top 5 guy up in the flyweight division. Tagir's very good. He's fought the who's who. The only problem with Tagir, and this could be a big problem, and I think weigh-ins are very important for this fight, because Tagir Ulanbekov, this guy cuts a lot of weight for the flyweight division. I believe it was his last fight where he was supposed to fight Joshua Van, and he shows up at weigh-ins. He missed weight by like 4 pounds, but not only did he miss weight by like 4 pounds, but he looked awful, and I'm talking terrible just absolutely terrible. So I need to see Tagir Ulanbekov on the scale. I think he probably should be moving up a weight class at this point, but as long as the weight cut goes fine, I think this should be a good fight for Tagir. I just think he's going to be better than Clayton Carpenter really wherever the fight goes. I think Ulanbekov has underrated striking, and then I think he can wrestle and grapple with some of the best in the division as well. So I like Tagir. The weight cut, yeah, let's see if he gets it under control this time, because against Joshua Van, that fight got canceled because he just looked just awful. So yeah, but the pick for me is going to be Tagir, and it's going to be Tagir to win this fight by decision. Next, we got Benardo Sopaj going against Ricky Turcios. We got Sopaj, 24 years old, 5'6", with a 66-inch reach, 11-3 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Ricky Turcios, 31 years old, 5'9", with a 71-inch reach, 12-4 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Sopaj opened at minus 300, currently minus 280. Turcios opened up plus 250. He's currently plus 240. This is a fight we were supposed to break down or watch a couple months ago, I believe, at this point. Turcios pulled out after he waited, some kind of medical issue or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on Sopaj. I thought this guy has a bright future ahead of him. Came in there making his debut against Vinicius on Oliveira on short notice, and he was on his way to looking very good and winning that fight until he just completely death-gassed. But again, he came in there on like a couple days short notice. But prior to that, he showed good wrestling, showed good grappling, good ground and pound, good striking as well. I think Sopaj is the real deal, and Turcios is a guy that I'm just not high on. I've never been high on. I've never been sold on. I think he's had some very just awful performances in the UFC. The Raul Rosas Jr. fight just got completely dominated and submitted in the second round. The Ayman Zahabi fight was probably one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen in my entire life, where he went out there and he was 27 for 235 on his strikes, landing at a 11% accuracy. I mean, you could blindfold a random person, I think. Blindfold a random person, throw him in there, and I think he can land about 11%. I mean, the Ricky Turcios, that was one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen. Right up there with William Knight against Marcin Prachnio. So, yeah, not impressed with Turcios. His wins are trash. Kevin Natividad, split decision win. Brady Heastan, split decision win. Not a terrible win there, I guess, but arguably lost that fight. This should be Sopaj really however he wants. I will say I think Turcios is durable. He is tough to get out of there. I think he is a black belt, good scrambling ability. So I'll say he hangs in there, but loses a decision. Give me Benardo Sopaj to win this fight and win it by decision. Next, we have Rinya Nakamura going against Muin Gafurov. We got Nakamura, 29 years old, 5'7", with a 68-inch reach, 9-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Muin Gafurov, 28 years old, 5'7", with a 68-inch reach, 19-6 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Rinya opened at minus 450. He's currently minus 550. Muin Gafurov opened at plus 350, currently plus 400. That photo's very zoomed in and quite terrifying. But what is even more terrifying is the skill set of Nakamura. Nakamura, wrestling background. This guy is just a physical freak, just physically so strong, able to get guys down to the ground. A very sneaky, slick, tricky submission game. Once the fight hits the mat, we saw him get a Fernie Garcia in a bunch of crazy wild submissions, and then on the feet he just throws with a ton of power. And it's a wide line here for Rinya Nakamura. Every fight he's been in thus far, he's had a wide line because there's some hype on this guy. What I will say though is I think there has been some hype just completely died down here. You know, a lot of people were excited about this guy, including me, and I'm still excited about this guy, but his last 2 performances, although he won them, and he won them handily, they weren't close, he's not going out there and finishing Carlos Vera, which is inexcusable. He's not going out there and finishing Fernie Garcia, who Fernie's tough, but you should be finishing a guy that you're just so much better in. But this is where I think he gets back on track in terms of his finishing ways. I think he's going to go out here and try to push for that finish. He talked about not being happy with his last performance, because why should you be happy? You know, you should be finishing 40-year-old Carlos Vera. So Muin Gafurov, I think he's solid. I think he's good pretty much everywhere that he can wrestle a little bit. He throws with bad intentions. He has power, but this is just a tough matchup for him. I also think that Muin Gafurov is extremely chinny. I've seen him dropped in pretty much every single fight. Every single fight, this guy's getting dropped. He's never been knocked out officially, but getting hurt like all the time. And then I also think he's very gassy. I don't think he has the best cardio in the world. He's slowing down in pretty much every single, second, third round there is. So I think Rinya is going to push a pace here, and I think that Gafurov is going to be in trouble wherever this fight goes. On the feet, I think Nakamura has the power to hurt Gafurov badly, and then on the ground, especially when Gafurov's tired, I think Nakamura can maybe lock something up. So I'm going Rinya Nakamura to win this fight. I'll take him to win this fight by second or third round submission. Moving on, we got Karol Rosa going against Ailin Perez. We got Karol Rosa, 30 years old, 5'5", with a 67.5-inch reach, 18-6 and 3-2 in her last 5 fights. Ailin Perez, 30 years old, 5'5", with a 66-inch reach, 11-2 and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. So we have Karol Rosa opening at -170. And then something weird happened. I think it was like maybe Monday night. Just somebody dropped a bomb on Karol Rosa, and she went from like -170 to like -300. I was like, wow, geez. But yeah, she came back. She did come back to earth a little bit. She's now -255. And as far as Ailin Perez, opened up +145. She's currently +215. So this is going to be a step up in competition for Ailin Perez. Ailin Perez, she's looked very good. She's looked very impressive for the most part. I'd say like 95% of the time she's looked good. There have been some moments in some of these fights where it's like, oh, it's not, you're almost getting finished by Lucy Pudilova. That's not a great look. Oh, you got submitted by Stefan Jaeger. That's not a good look. But other than that, she's looked dominant and she's looked very good. But this is a big step up. You know, this is not Daria Zelenikova. This is not Jocelyn Edwards. This is most certainly not Lucy Pudilova. And this is absolutely not a washed Ashley Evans Smith. This is Karol Rosa, who's fought some very, very good competition throughout her career, and who's just going to be the much more well-rounded fighter in this matchup. You know, Perez can wrestle a little bit, but in terms of the striking, it's one-way traffic, and Karol Rosa's striking as of late has looked incredible. The leg kicks have looked nasty. She's always had that volume, but now she's thrown with more power. Karol Rosa's a black belt in BJJ as well. So yeah, I think Ailin Perez, I actually think she's going to have success early. I think she has the wrestling and the capability to get the fight down to the ground early. What worries me about Perez is her cardio. You know, she does slow down as the fight goes on. We saw it especially in that Pudilova fight where she was completely death-gassed. And I have a feeling if Rhodes is able to provide some resistance here, more resistance than some of these other bums have not been able to provide, like a Zelenikova, I think that Perez is going to start to get tired a little bit earlier this time. And I think Karol Rosa can start to take over more and more as the fight goes on. So I think Perez is going to win the first. I think Karol Rosa is going to start stuffing takedowns. I think Perez is going to start making mistakes, and I think Rosa is going to finish Ailin Perez in that third round. So give me Karol Rosa. It could either pound her out, maybe lock of a sub, but I'm going to say Karol Rosa wins this fight and wins this fight in the third round. And from a prize picks perspective here, Ailin Perez's takedowns is set at 2. I think she probably gets at least 2 in the first round. She's not going to strike with Karol Rosa, so I think this fight does get extended. Potentially even goes the fight's heavily favored to go the distance, but you take a look at Ailin Perez, she's landing over 5.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. So I think Perez probably gets 2-3 takedowns like in the first round alone. So if we get to the third round, I think that easily hits. So I like the more there on Ailin Perez and her takedowns, even though I'm picking her to lose. Next fight, we have Grant Dawson going against Carlos Diego Ferreira. We got Grant Dawson, 30 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, 22-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Diego Ferreira, 40 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach, 19-5 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We have Grant Dawson opening up -325, currently -255. Diego Ferreira opened up +275, currently +215. So this is an interesting fight here. So Diego Ferreira is a guy that I thought was completely done a couple fights ago. There was the fight where, the loss to Beneil Dariush back in 2021. That wasn't a bad loss. It was a fight where it was a very fun, scramble-heavy fight. A competitive fight as well. It wasn't a bad loss, but he did get broken against Gregor Gillespie after that in the second round. Wasn't the best look, and then he got an injury knockout. I think he hurt his rib in the Mateus Gamrot fight. So at one point, Diego Ferreira was like 36, 37, 38 years old on a 3-fight skid, back-to-back finish losses. People started to count him out. He was an underdog against Michael Johnson. Knocks out Michael Johnson brutally in the second round. And then he was a massive underdog against Mateusz Rebecki. And then he goes out there and finishes Mateusz Rebecki in the third round. But here is a spot where I kind of think this fight might look a little bit like that Gregor Gillespie fight, where early on there was a bunch of fun scrambles. between Dawson and Ferreira. But as the fight goes on, at this point in this stage of their careers, like Dawson's 10 years younger. Diego Ferreira is a 40-year-old lightweight. Yes, he's had some good performances as of late, but Mateusz Rebecki, that guy is a gas bag. Rebecki has 1 round of cardio. And yeah, congrats to him. He won as a big dog, but Grant Dawson can push a pace for the full 15 minutes. Grant Dawson has multiple third-round finishes in his career, second and third-round finishes, right? He had that last-second knockout win against Leonardo Santos, had a second-round submission win against Derek Minner, second-round submission win against Trezano, second-round submission win on the Contender Series against Adrian Diaz, third-round submission win against Jared Gordon, third-round submission win against Mark Madsen. I think he had another second-round finish against Rafa Garcia as well. So a ton of second and third-round finishes here with Grant Dawson. So I think he's going to be able to push a pace here. And we have seen Carlos Diego Ferreira slow down in the past. We've also seen Grant Dawson slow down in the past. You know, the Ricky Glenn fight comes to mind. But I think Dawson just made a ton of improvements. And Dawson, I think, has really turned a corner. And I think we saw that in his last fight. Now he's starting to implement ground and pound. And that ground and pound looked absolutely vicious, and I can see him implementing that ground and pound as this fight goes on here. So Diego Ferreira, he has some paths here. I feel like he's going to be a popular dog this week, like on the feet. You have to heavily favor Ferreira, but how long is this fight going to take place on the feet? I don't think that long. So yeah, I like Dawson here. I think he's going to implement his will, get takedowns, get on top, and eventually break Carlos Diego Ferreira in the second or third round and win this fight by TKO. So give me Grant Dawson. I'll say third round TKO. Next fight, we have a newcomer stepping in on short notice. This was supposed to be Zachary Reese versus SD Dumas, which would have been a hilarious fight. But in steps Azamat Bekoev, who looks like some people are high on, some hype on this guy. We got Bekoev, who is 29 years old, 6'1" with a 72-inch reach, 18-3, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Zachary Reese, 30 years old, 6'4" with a 77-inch reach, 8-1, and 4-1. In his last 5 fights. We do have odds here. Bekoev open up minus 250 is currently minus 250. Reese open up plus 210, currently plus 210. Looks like the line is starting to come down a little bit on Zach Reese. Some money coming on Reese. And yeah, I went and watched Bekoev, and I did recognize this guy because I have watched him before. I've seen his Fernando fight before, Lucas Fernando. I've seen that fight before. I saw the Dylan Butka fight before. So I knew I recognized this guy and went back and watched Bekoev, and I'm just not that impressed. I know he has the EV at the end of his name, but kind of one-dimensional. The striking didn't look great. I think he's going to be at a pretty big striking disadvantage here for a couple reasons. For one, Zachary Reese is going to be towering over this guy. Zachary Reese is a legit 6'4", whereas Bekoev, I'm not even sure he's 6'1". I think he might be fibbing a little bit there. I mean, I could see him being like maybe 5'11". I think Reese is going to be much bigger than this guy. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, and I just think he's the much more dangerous striker and the better striker. Zachary Reese has power in his hands, and I mean a lot of power in his hands and his kicks as well. So on the feet, I think Bekoev is in a lot of trouble. The reason why I believe that Bekoev is a big favorite here, and people are making him a big favorite, is because Zachary Reese has no takedown defense. You can take this guy down. A gust of wind can take this guy down, and Bekoev can take this guy down. But if Bekoev does take this guy down, Zachary Reese is content to be on his back and throw up submissions, which I typically don't like. I typically don't like that because you can lose minutes, you can lose rounds, and you can lose a decision. But I don't think this fight is going to a decision. And the reason being is because, one, Zachary Reese is extremely dangerous on the feet and on the mat. And for two, Bekoev's coming in here on very short notice. Very short notice, about a week short notice, and I don't like that because you go back and look at Bekoev's fights, and he's slowing down in a lot of these fights. I don't think he has the best cardio. He's making a lot of mistakes in the grappling as the fight goes on. So, yeah, as a pretty big dog here, I think Reese is very live. He's had the full camp. He has the better cardio. He has the better striking. He's dangerous on the feet, on the mat. Bekoev, he has a path to victory, which would be taking down Reese, winning minutes, and ultimately winning a decision, maybe getting a finish on the mat. But I'm going to go Zachary Reese here, and I think he can win this fight by any method. I think he can knock out Bekoev on the feet. I think he can even find a submission off his back. So I'm going to go Zachary Reese. I'm going to take him to win this fight by third round knockout. I think Bekoev's going to start out hot, win some minutes on top, and as the fight goes on, Bekoev's going to slow down, and that's when Reese is going to finish him in that second or third round. So give me Zachary Reese to win this fight. I'll take him to win this fight by third round knockout. Next, we have a very fun fight. This is probably one of my favorite fights on the entire card because I'm a huge fan of both these guys. But we got Jailton Almeida going against Serghei Spivak. We got Jailton Almeida, 33 years old, 6'3" with a 79-inch reach, 21-3 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Serghei Spivak, 29 years old, 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, 17-4 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Almeida opened up minus 320, currently minus 430. And then Spivak opened up plus 260, currently plus 330. This is a very simple fight for me to break down. Like I said, I'm a big fan of both guys. I like Spivak. Spivak's he's grown on me in the past. I kind of thought he was a bum and a fraud, but no, this guy's had a ton of success in the UFC, and he's able to go out there and beat these guys with no ground games. But this is a fight where I think it's very important to go back and watch, some of their fights here. And I think the 2 fights that I went back to watch, which told me everything I need to know, was Spivak's first fight against Tybura, where Tybura took him down and Spivak had nothing off his back. Looked awful. The other fight, which was more concerning, was old man Alexei Oleinik, 44-year-old Alexei Oleinik, taking down Serghei Spivak, and he instantly got into full mount. And I'm talking instantly. Took him down, got into full mount. And we know Alexei Oleinik, right? Instead of, pounding out Spivak, setting something, he went for the scarf hold, which he almost tapped out Spivak with the scarf hold, I think in like the late second round. But, old man Oleinik was able to take down Spivak and really just have his way with him, get into mount instantly. So I have a sneaky suspicion that Spivak's ground game on top, pretty good. Spivak's ground game on bottom, atrocious, just terrible, non-existent, because he's not used to being on his back. So how I see this fight playing out is I think whoever gets on top first is going to win the fight. And who's going to shoot a takedown first? Probably the guy that shoots a takedown 10 seconds into every single fight he's ever been in, and that is Jailton Almeida. I think Jailton Almeida gets on top of Serghei Spivak and pounds him out, and I think Spivak quits. I think both these guys have some quit in them. I think both these guys look for the door if they don't get their way, and I see Jailton Almeida getting on top, getting to mount, and pounding away until the ref steps in. So give me Jailton Almeida to win this fight by first round TKO. Next fight, we have Payton Talbott going against Raoni Barcelos. We got Payton Talbott, who is 26 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach, 9-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Raoni Barcelos, 37 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, 18-5 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Payton Talbott opened up minus 900, currently minus 1,200. Raoni Barcelos opened up as a plus 600 underdog. He's currently a plus 750 underdog here. So the odds are wild, but the odds are wild for like all these fights. Payton Talbott, it's just really hard to pick against him right now. 26 years old. If this fight was a couple of years ago, these odds wouldn't really be where they're at all. But the fact of the matter is, Raoni, he's getting up there in age. The chin's starting to deteriorate a little bit. Payton Talbott, he's getting better. He's looked phenomenal. He has great striking, the power has looked better than ever at this point. So I think it's pretty easy to say Talbott's going to go out there and knock out Raoni Barcelos at some point in this fight. Barcelos probably going to look to get the fight down to the mat here, but I'm not sure he has the cardio to do that for 3 rounds. Not sure he's going to submit Payton Talbott early. So I think just at some point, Payton Talbott's going to land a big shot. He's going to hurt Barcelos, and then he's going to finish him shortly after. So give me Payton Talbott to win this fight. I'll take him to win this fight by second round knockout. Moving on, we got Bogdan Guskov going against Billy Elikana. We got Guskov, 32 years old, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach, 16-3 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Billy Elikana, 29 years old, 6'2" with a 77-inch reach, 7-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. I hate this fight because, man, it was going to be Johnny Walker versus Bogdan Guskov. How funny would that have been? I mean, that's an hilarious fight here. Now you bring in Elikana, who, I don't know, just not impressed with them. Kind of a meat and potatoes type guy, not really an exciting fighter. He's not bad, but just not overly impressed. I thought Johnny Walker, would have probably got knocked out in hilarious fashion, but this is a fight that I kind of think could play out kind of boring. Let's see the odds here. Looks like Guskov opened up minus 225. He's now minus 300. Elikana opened up plus 190, currently plus 250. So yeah, Guskov's a guy that I don't think he has the most skill in the world, but what he does have is just dynamite in his hands. Apparently, he's like a brown belt or a black belt in BJJ, which he doesn't really show that in any of his fights, but I guess he has that in his back pocket. Elikana, like I said, meat and potatoes type guy. He's going to come forward. He's tough. He's durable. Not the highest volume in the world. Really not a ton of power. The power difference is heavily in favor of Guskov, and the level of competition is heavily in favor of Guskov as well. So, yeah, it's Guskov. The question is, for me, does he finish Elikana, who's never been finished, who showed toughness, who's shown durability? I'll say Guskov by decision here, but this is a fight I will not be really touching at all from a betting perspective. But yeah, Guskov for me, but I really wanted to see that Walker fight. And then from a prize picks perspective, though, they have the fight time set at 4.75 minutes. I think Elikana is tough enough to survive at least the first round here. I know Guskov, he hits hard, but Elikana, like I said, this guy's never been finished. He has that toughness. I don't mind the more than 4.75 minutes fight time. Get the fight going to the second round. We saw Guskov go to the second round with like Ryan Spann. So yeah, I don't mind that more in the fight time there. Moving on to the next fight, we have René de Ridder going against Kevin Holland. We got de Ridder, 34 years old, 6'4", with a 78-inch reach, 18-2, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Kevin Holland, 32 years old, 6'3", with an 81-inch reach, 26-12, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We have Kevin Holland open at -160, so this line's actually flipped on some books. Some books we have a pick'em, but some books we have Kevin Holland +100, +105. But yeah, Kevin Holland +100. René de Ridder opened up as a +140 underdog, and he's currently -120. I know a lot of people got in on de Ridder on the off week. Every time I logged into X, that's all I saw was de Ridder. This is a borderline 1-800-GAMBLER fight for me, because how can you bet on either of these guys? Did anybody watch de Ridder's fight with Gerald Meerschaert? He looked awful. He looked so bad. I couldn't believe my eyes. This guy had hype on him coming into the UFC. He looked just atrocious against Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert was piecing this guy up for 4 minutes and 50 seconds on his way to winning the first round, outstriking de Ridder. And de Ridder lands a shot at the end of the first round, drops Meerschaert, probably steals the round. But prior to that, Meerschaert was piecing this guy up on the feet. The second round comes around. De Ridder gets a takedown. He gets reversed, ends up losing the round against Gerald Meerschaert, and is completely gassed out. Looks awful, looks tired. And then in the third round, both guys are just completely gassed. De Ridder has, looks like he has nothing left in the tank, and then all of a sudden, Gerald Meerschaert is even more gassed somehow, and de Ridder taps him out, and then both guys at the end of the fight, they're so tired they can't even stand up. They just lay on the ground for like 5 minutes. I think that performance was just completely awful. With that said, though, so you have a guy in de Ridder who I think is extremely, I don't think he could be any more overrated, de Ridder. I think his striking is the worst striking in the entire UFC. I think his cardio is some of the worst cardio in the entire UFC. But what he does have is a legit BJJ black belt. The wrestling's not great, but he can get fights down to the mat. And if he does get you down to the mat, I've seen him tap out a lot of guys in the first round. But I've also seen him not get somebody out of there early and then just completely gas. I've seen him quit in fights. I've seen him lose third rounds. So the cardio for me is a big red flag on de Ridder. So yeah, lots of red flags on de Ridder, right? Let's talk about Kevin Holland, who has probably more red flags. I mean, Kevin Holland, you just can't trust this guy. This guy has the worst, single-handedly the worst fight IQ in UFC history. This guy has also quit in fights. Quit in the Dolidze fight, quit in the Stephen Thompson fight. He's went out there with the worst game plans imaginable. In fights you want him to wrestle, he'll strike. In fights where you want him to strike, he'll wrestle. Kevin Holland is the most frustrating guy ever to bet on. So I think there's a reason this fight's a pick 'em, because how can you trust either one of these two? And I have to make a pick. I have to pick one of these bozos. As far as a pick, I don't know. I don't know who to pick, because de Ridder, I think he's so overrated. I think he's so bad. But de Ridder could take down Kevin Holland and instantly tap him out shortly ever. It's going to take one takedown to tap out Kevin Holland. But if de Ridder's not able to take him down, he's getting knocked out. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. This is rough. I am going to pick... I'll pick Kevin Holland. I'll pick Kevin Holland. Like, this is probably my least confident pick ever, but I'll take Kevin Holland. I'll say he's able to keep this fight upright or at least survive the first round. And then after 5 minutes, I just don't think De Ridder's going to have anything left in the tank. I think Holland will knock him out in the second round, but may God help you if you bet on either one of these guys. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Kevin Holland, KO2. With that said, though, there is a couple props that might stick out for this fight. But as far as a money line goes, you can't lay money on any of these, either one of these guys ever. But yeah, if you got De Ridder at plus money, that's probably fine. But geez, let's move on. Next, we got Renato Moicano going against Beneil Dariush. We got Moicano, 35 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach, 25-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Beneil Dariush, 35 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, 22-6-1 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. We have same age. Looks like Moicano's going to have a 1-inch height advantage. But yeah, these guys are pretty similar, as you can see throughout the tail of the tape, which is weird because when you think of Dariush, you think of some old guy. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's had gray hair since he was 18 years old. But in terms of these odds, Moicano opened at minus 210. He's currently minus 170. Dariush opened at plus 180. He's currently plus 145. And I'm looking at this matchup, and it's like these guys are very, like I said, these guys are very similar in the tail of the tape. These guys are very similar in the level of competition. These guys are very similar in terms of, being skill for skill. But one guy is minus 170 and one guy's plus 145. Why is that? The momentum is in favor of Moicano. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and 2 very good wins at that. Knocking out Jailton Turner. Great win. I think he's on a 3-fight winning streak, actually. Beat Drew Dober by decision, right? Knocked out Jailton Turner, ground and pound, and then he also got the big win against Benoit Saint Denis with the doctor stoppage. Whereas Beneil Dariush is on a 2-fight skid, getting knocked out by Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira. But like I said, skill for skill, I think these guys are very close. And how I see this fight matching up, I think it's a very, very winnable matchup for Beneil Dariush. The durability is a problem. It's a question mark for Dariush. It certainly is at this point. He's been knocked out 5 times. But guess who else is not durable? Renato Moicano. Moicano's been knocked out his fair share of fights. Moicano's been dropped in a handful of fights in the UFC as well. So I think both guys, same age, both guys, the durability is not great. But I think Dariush hits much harder. Renato Moicano has 17 UFC fights, only 1 knockdown, and it was against Cub Swanson how long ago? So is he going to knock out Dariush? Maybe. A lot of people are thinking so, but Tsarukyan and Oliveira knocked out Dariush. I think Tsarukyan and Oliveira would both knock out Moicano as well. So, yeah, I think it's a close fight. I think Dariush is going to be the better striker, winning minutes on the feet. Maybe Moicano can hurt him here or there, but I also think Dariush can hurt Moicano and knock him out. Dariush hits very, very hard for the division, and I also think that Dariush is more likely to get on top and win minutes on the ground. So, with all these ways for Dariush to win the fight at plus money, it's a no-brainer. I'm going Dariush to win this fight. I'll take him to win this fight by knockout. And if he gets knocked out, so be it. But Moicano's not knocked out anybody on the feet ever. So give me Dariush. I'll take him to win this fight by 3rd round KO. Next we have Jamal Hill going against Yuri Prochazka. We got Jamal Hill, 33 years old, 6'4", with a 79-inch reach, 12-2 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Yuri Prochazka, 32 years old, 6'3", with an 80-inch reach, 35-1 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Jamal Hill opened up minus 130. So looks like money is starting to come back on Jamal. It was about a pick 'em, but just recently, like Jamal Hill's back to like minus 120, minus 130, and Yuri Prochazka is around like plus 110, plus 115 at this point. But yeah, this is a tough fight to call. It's a Yuri Prochazka fight. There's a lot of volatility in Yuri Prochazka fights. What I will say is both these guys have the worst striking defense I've ever seen. Yuri Prochazka has a 39% striking defense, which you wouldn't think that's possible, but he literally doesn't try to defend punches. He'll actually even help you out and headbutt your punches as well. So yeah, it makes sense that Yuri has a 39% striking defense. And you look at Jamal Hill, his striking defense is 46%, which is also not great. So both these guys are hittable. Both these guys have power. I do like the striking more of Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill also brings more volume to the table. I also think that Jamal Hill is the more durable guy at this point. Yuri Prochazka has been finished, I believe, 5 times in his career, where Jamal Hill, he's been finished twice, but one was that Paul Craig finish, where he hurt his arm. So, and then the only other time he got knocked out was by Alex Pereira. So yeah, both these guys have been knocked out by Alex Pereira combined 3 times. I'm going to go Jamal Hill here. It's hard to be confident. It's hard to pick against a guy like Yuri because this guy's a madman. You don't know what you're going to expect. But I'll say the first round kind of feeling out process type thing. And this is how every Yuri fight plays out. First round, it's always like a feeling out process type thing. It's a slower paced fight. But I don't know what it is with Yuri. But once that second round hits, he just throws all game planning out the window, and he decides just to go out there and go out on his shield. You take a look at Yuri in the UFC. He has 6 fights. 5 of them have ended in the first round. He got knocked out in the first 13 seconds by Pereira's last fight. He knocked out Alexander Rakic in the second round, which was a crazy second round. Got knocked out by Alex Pereira in their first fight in the second round. He knocked out Dominic Reyes in the second round in a very crazy second round, and then he knocked out Volkan Oezdemir in the second. So it's always round 2 for Yuri, win or lose, and I kind of see the same thing happening here. I think he's going to get reckless. I think he's going to leave openings like he always does, and I'll say Hill finds the big shot and knocks out Yuri Prochazka. Give me Jamal Hill to win this fight. Jamal Hill by second round knockout. All right, now we have the co-main event, bantamweight title on the line. It is Umar Nurmagomedov going against Merab Dvalishvili. We got Nurmagomedov, 29 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach, 18-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Merab Dvalishvili, 34 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach, 18-4, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We have Umar opening up minus 200. He's currently minus 310. Merab Dvalishvili opening up plus 170. He's currently plus 250. And I was surprised that Merab took this fight, actually. I kind of thought that he would try to do his best to stay away from Umar Nurmagomedov, but it kind of feels like the UFC might have forced him to take this fight. Because if I'm Merab, I'm trying to rematch O'Malley. If I'm Merab, I'm trying to rematch Petr Yan. I'm not trying to go out there and fight Umar Nurmagomedov. So it kind of was interesting to see that they're going to be fighting this soon. I kind of thought it would happen down the road, but we're getting it right now. And yeah, kind of how I'm seeing this fight play out is it's definitely a wide line here for Umar. I do think this is going to be a competitive fight, but I just don't think that Merab is going to be able to go out there and just take down Nurmagomedov, dozens of times throughout this fight. I think he's going to try to. I don't think he's going to succeed. And then I think that Umar is just going to do more damage here. I think Umar is much more dangerous. Everybody's more dangerous than Merab. I think Umar can land the bigger shots, have the bigger moments. I think Umar is more likely to find a finish, whether that's a submission, whether that's landing a big shot. We've seen Dvalishvili dropped in a handful of fights. We've seen him hurt in a handful of fights. So I think it's going to be like a damage over control type situation where Merab is going to get some control. He is going to attempt 50 takedowns in this fight, probably get a couple of them, but I'm going to say Umar just does more and wins the fight. But yeah, minus 310, it is a wide line, but I'll pick Umar to win this fight by like a damage-based type decision. So Umar by decision. From a prize picks perspective, they have Umar Nurmagomedov fantasy score at 115.15. And the reason I like the more here is we have 25 minutes to work with. You get 0.6 points for significant strikes, which I like. But what I also like is you get points on prize picks for defending takedowns. And he could literally hit this more with just defending takedowns. Merab attempted like 50 takedowns against Petr Yan. Only landed I think 9 of them. If that happens here, he's going to hit his more just by stuffing takedowns. So I like the more there. I think the strikes will add up. He can hit some takedowns of his own. The win bonus in there, and then just defending takedowns. Like those are going to add up. So I like the more there. If you guys want to check it out, use that promo code DFSBTN. You'll get $50 in your prize picks account when you place your first $5 entry, whether it wins or loses. All right, moving on to the main event. We got Islam Makhachev going against Arman Tsarukyan. If you guys have not commented down your significant strikes, be sure to do that. $25 on the line to whoever gets it correct or closest to being correct. All right, Islam Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan, 2 for the lightweight championship. We'll start with Islam. 33 years old, 5'10", with a 70.5-inch reach, 26-1, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Arman Tsarukyan, 28 years old, 5'7", with a 72.5-inch reach, 22-3, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Islam opened up -300, currently -370. Tsarukyan opened up +250. He's currently +295. And yeah, the first fight was, I'll never forget the first fight, to be honest. It was back in like 2018, 2019. Arman Tsarukyan was coming in there on short notice. He was extremely young at the time, like 19, 20 years old. And he was kind of supposed to get ran through, beaten easily by Islam. And he lost the fight, don't get me wrong, but he had moments in that fight. He actually took down Islam at one point, and he was hanging in the wrestling, the grappling, and I'm like, geez, this guy Arman Tsarukyan is going to have a very bright future, and that has proven to be true. He's had a very good record, good stint in the UFC here thus far, and now they're finally running it back several years later. But I think a lot has changed. I think both guys have gotten better, but Islam has also gotten a lot better. Islam's striking is some of the best striking in the division. Like, this guy literally just went out there and was out-striking Dustin Poirier at distance, was having a lot of great, out-striking Alexander Volkanovski, knocking out Volkanovski. Like, Islam Makhachev's striking has improved leaps and bounds since their first fight. He's always had that wrestling. He's always had that grappling. But yeah, Islam's gotten a lot better, as has Tsarukyan. So, yeah, where does Tsarukyan beat Islam Makhachev? Is he going to take him down, out-grapple him? No. Is he going to outstrike him? I don't believe so. I think he's going to have to finish Islam Makhachev. And Tsarukyan, he does have power, but just seems like a tough road to hoe here for Arman Tsarukyan. So yeah, I got to go Islam. I think he wins this fight. I think it's competitive. I think Arman can definitely have some moments, maybe land some big shots, compete in the striking, compete wherever the fight goes, but I just think Islam's going to be too much. He's going to be better everywhere, and I think Islam Makhachev's going to win this fight, and win this fight by a pretty comfortable decision. Give me Islam Makhachev to win this fight, and win this fight by decision. There you guys have it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you guys could do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment down those significant strikes. All those things help a ton. Check out dfsbythenumbers.com. That's where you'll find all my other content, my bets, the stats you see on the Friday, the Saturday shows, articles, just a ton of stuff on the website. It's the best way to support me. And then also check out Prize Picks. Use that code DFSBTN. Get your $50 bonus when you place your first $5 lineup, and then get your free national championship pick. Will Howard needs 1 passing yard. I think he can do it, guys. So yeah, best of luck, everybody, for UFC 311. Should be a phenomenal card, and let's keep the ball rolling. See you guys later.